So once the upper and lower impressions have been scanned along with the byte registration, we're brought into this stage now where we need to prepare the impressions and complete our alignment and so on. So I'm going to work my way around the arch, selecting points, and the purpose of this is obviously just to trim away all the excess material, and we want to be very cognizant of the fact that a lot of effort has been gone to make sure that a lot of effort has been used in order to make sure that we're capturing as much anatomical detail as possible. So we want to respect that and try and capture that as we work our way around the arch, selecting our points. So once I'm happy with that, I click on OK. It trims the upper impression and then it presents the lower impression, and it's just the same idea. And it doesn't matter from which side of the impression we work, whichever makes us feel that more comfortable and gives us a better view as to where we are. Now obviously we got the wall there of the impression tray. It's quite easy for us to hit that wall by accident, and you can see that the software then creates this unusual spline trying to get from that point all the way around through to this point. If it is a situation like that where we do make a mistake, probably the best thing to do is just forget about it and move on. And you can see here it's quite obvious that for this case it's much easier to work from this side of the impression. Click on the first point again and the loop closes over. So the best thing now, we can click on show points. Those points are presented to us again, and if I right click on that spurious point, right click, select remove point, software gets rid of that point and now joins up the other 2 points that were left, and we get a nice smooth continuous line between the points. Now is the fun part. So we're presented with the upper impression and we are presented with the upper side of the byte registration, and it's our job now to give the software some assistance. We need to indicate to the software some points that are common on the byte registration and on the impression itself. So we can see that the level of detail there looks pretty similar, but it'll be interesting to see now once we do the alignment, once we select those points, how the software interprets that. And obviously the accuracy of the software is going to be based on the consistency between the byte registration and the impression. Because of distortion and so on, we will see some levels of inconsistencies. So we need to select 3 points. I like to just take them in pairs. So what I tend to do is keep the points as spread out as far as possible. So I'm going for that cusp tip there on the molar, and as we look at the canine, and we can look at it from either side. So for example, I can select the tip there, and let's zoom in a little bit, and we can select that there, and just move the models, and I might be happy going for that point in the center there and that point there. And then the bottom left hand side we hit align, and the software then, using those 3 points, 3 pairs of points, tries to align the impression with the byte registration. Now it's using those 3 points as an initial guide. It is then going to go through a best fit arrangement, a best fit calculation, and try and align the impression and the byte registration. So if we zoom in there, you get to see that this seems to be, but at this point it seems to be a nice snug fit between the byte and the impression. If I zoom out, we do have a tool over here, a cross-sectional tool. I can draw a line through the model, and then the software creates a plane, and that plane slices through the model, and we can take a look at that and see how everything sits together. So this gives us a really nice appreciation for what's going on. It gives us a nice appreciation for the challenges that the software is facing. Here we can make out the outline of the profile of the tooth, and then we also get to see the profile of the bite registration. Now there will be some distortion. It's inevitable. You know, it's not possible for us to have an undistorted bite registration. And we can see the same here. But the software has done a really good job, given what it has to what it has to work with. Oops, I overdid it there a little bit. And we can turn off the cross-sectional view. At any point we can take a standard view and bring us back to where we were. So we hit next, and now we need to do the same task, except this side on the lower impression. So it's always good to survey the case a little bit, and let's kind of get a grasp for where we're at. And again, working with the idea of keeping those points as far apart as possible. Go there, maybe there, and let's aim for that little incisal edge there, and midpoint of the incisal edge there. Just take a look at it from the other side, make sure we are on the incisal edge, because obviously it could be easy for us to maybe be a little bit off and run up or down the lingual surface. So I'll hit align, and again the software does what it can. Now we might be a little bit lucky on this particular case. It was a good bite registration. I'll take a cross-sectional view again, and let's see how everything goes. We'll use a clipping plane, invert that clipping plane, go back. Okay. Okay, so now we can see the green obviously is the impression material. We can see the outline of the upper arch. Sorry, green is the bite registration, outline of the upper arch, outline of the lower arch, and we can see some red areas here where the software is highlighting areas where there's over contact. Okay, if I wish, I can just slide that scale there and it removes the bite registration. So yes, we see the profile of the bite registration, but it's gone. You know, we don't. It's still there in the background, of course it is, but it's gone from this particular view, so we get a good picture as to what's going on. Okay, so at this point, where are we at? What decisions are we going to make? Are we going to accept this? Is it right? Is it wrong? Do we know? Is it right? Is it wrong? Really, how are we going to know? So we obviously will have photographs. We'll have some clinical notes where we can judge if everything's okay. The software is identifying that we've got collisions. Down the bottom left hand side, it tells us in nice bright red writing we've got collisions. We can see those points there as well. Now, what do we do at this stage? We've got a couple of options. We could leave it as it is. We could decide, do you know what, it looks good. It looks good in this respect. It looks good in this respect. Yep, and it looks okay. And when we consider it, the level of collision there isn't all that significant. So we can accept it, or we can tell the software, you take over, optimize that. Let's see if we can maintain that relationship front to back, left to right in terms of rotation. Let's see if we can maintain that. Well, maybe you saw there's a little movement of the lower arch, and what the software has done is tried to optimize that occlusion. It's tried to effectively wiggle or jiggle that lower arch into a position where it can fit. We've now got some definite points of contact, definite contact between the upper and lower arches without over contact. We can review the case here. We decide, are we happy with it or are we not happy with it? Let's say we're not happy with it. We want to make some movements. Well, we can do so in a couple of ways. I click on the lower arch because that's the arch I want to move. Once I click on that, the software then produces these arrows, and I click on each arrow. It allows me to move the arch left to right or up and down. I click on the control key and now I've got some rotational movement that I can apply. I might want to move the arch forward and back. Look at the model from the side and we can move it forward. Now obviously as we're doing so, we're starting to see more collisions. An alternative mode of movement is to take a translation box. And this allows us now to freely just click and drag the models. We can rotate the arch around a vertical axis, and we can tip it, perhaps close up that posterior open bite that was there. At this moment we don't have any photographs of the patient, we don't know what the patient looks like. Maybe that genuinely is an open bite in the posterior region there on the left hand side. But what we try to do is get the bite to a position that we're happy with, that from our records looks like it is the bite. And at that point, again, we've got collisions. We can decide, okay, software, you take over. We hit the optimize button. We'll see then that the software opens that bite. It has opened it, it's tried to settle it out. We do have some definite points of contact in there. We can see we've got very nice contact around that region there, and if I rotate, can we see? Yeah, you can see that there's some contact here as well. Some definite contact. So it is a definite bite as far as the software is concerned. That is physically possible. Now we can go through this iteration as many times as we want. We can maybe try and settle that back there a little bit. We got collisions. We can optimize. And if it's a tricky bite, we can go forward and back, try it out a couple of times until we settle on a bite that we are happy with. And if we find we're getting lost and we're getting further from the real bite, well then we can always reset. The software brings us back to the stage where we're selecting the points. Now an alternative is that we can set the contacts. So if it's the case that we don't want to rely on the bite registration, we can we can ignore the bite registration and set our contact points. Let's go ahead again. And work with what we had. And align. And we're good. So we'll just hide the wax bite. Again, we see the same kind of contacts, which is very encouraging because it shows that the software was doing a good job. It was giving us a realistic bite. And we'll optimize those collisions. And we hit OK. So once we have the occlusion defined, we're happy with it, we've adjusted it as we feel is necessary, we then move into the stage where we're creating the virtual base. So the software brings us back a step to some extent. We're back to the stage where we've got our splines, and the software does bring the splines back in. It's effectively just giving us an opportunity to adjust the models again, or to adjust the splines if we feel that's necessary. But in this case it's not. So I just click on next. So there's 3 stages. We define the splines. The next stage is we define the base. We try to align the base with the occlusal plane and the sagittal plane, make sure we're happy with the size and symmetry and so on. And of course the final stage then will be where we merge the orthodontic base with the model. So what I'd like to do at this point is I'm going to hide the lower model, and I'm going to view the model from the front, and I'm going to adjust the base. So we can adjust the base such that it looks as if it's sitting in line with the occlusal plane, and we can do that in relation to the lower arch if we wish. So there's no There's no rule, it's whatever we feel comfortable with, whatever we feel is appropriate for the particular case. Then we look at it from the side, and again make an adjustment there to make sure it sits with the occlusal plane. Bring back in the lower model, and everything is looking pretty good from there. And then using the green control points at the corner, we can click and drag that base and change its size. Now you'll notice that as I do so, the size of the base changes in all directions. If we want to move it in only one direction, well, then we uncheck the scale symmetrically button, and then we can adjust the size of the base in whichever direction we want. So if we view the model from the front, we'll maybe just narrow that one up a little bit. Click it and drag it, move it to the side, and really all I'm doing is just checking here to make sure that our spacing on the right side and on the left side is even. Our spacing on the bottom and our spacing on the top is looking good. And I hit next. And the software then merges the anatomical detail of the model with the base, and that looks pretty good. And if we want to make any adjustments, we can do that, of course. We can take a step back. And one thing we do want to watch out for, we want to make sure that the outline of that spline is contained within the boundaries of the base. Maybe bring it in from the front as well. Just tidy it up. Click on next. And there we go. And that's it. Job done.